Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer. And today I wanted to talk about an issue that I mentioned before and I was told is not happening, but I find it to be a plight on the creative communities. And then I'm going to seg that into also comparing with how an author like Cormac McCarthy could not exist right now. Because of not only what's happening in the traditionally publishing industry, but also what's happening in the indie publishing industry, as we're going to get into with with the clip I'm going to show you. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. Number one way to be featured here is through Lemoi, where it's the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story that incorporates the prompt, and the first Monday video of the month is reading some of those prompt submissions and hopefully sharing the love of your creativity. The second way to be featured is if you're an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out, submit your first chapter and your cover and they will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more people find your work, because there is an audience looking for what you have made. The third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places. I was also recently published in an anthology, the Stygian Collection, which is also listed down below. It has 24 different authors in it, so it gives a good sampling of different people that you may or may not jive with, and I always love collections just for finding new authors. So there is that. All of it is in the description if you're interested. With that said, let's get into this. So I enjoy Nick Rekieta. I watch him, regularly enough because I like to check in, but I don't have that many hours to watch just Nick Rekieta because I have to read and do other things as well. But I check in on his stream sometimes and I watch him and I enjoy his sense of humor. Last week I came across, I was watching this stream, and Nick said something very enlightening that speaks on the level of, maybe you've heard of it, the culture war. Previously, I have been confronted by a variety of political people, told that I am not allowed to, or I'm not supposed to, be critical of indie books, especially indie books of certain political persuasions, because it looks bad and we're all supposed to stick together to stick it to the man. Well, I'm sorry. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't care about your political leaning. I don't care about anybody's political leaning. I'm here for the art, for the storytelling, and what storytelling stands for. And if you are here to make a buck and sell yourself because of political marketing, whether it's woke marketing or anti-woke marketing, I don't like you. You're the type of person that has made the creative space hostile towards creatives because it's dragged what was already political in some aspects. It's dragged it into a more hostile environment where even in critique groups, you can't present some ideas, you'll be attacked for other ideas, people are critiquing garbage things, and then you've got the sensitivity reader garbage ship, and it's just exacerbated the issue, and it doesn't make it any better when your marketing is antagonistic. It doesn't matter if you're left or right, and yes, the right wing has done it, and the right wing does not and has never cared about the arts. As somebody who has grown up not subscribing to the left wing or the right wing, I have gotten to experience the mockery that the left side did to the right wing when I was in the creative community, as being in the creative community, and I've seen the mocking from the right wing to the creative, saying that it is a waste of time, it is garbage, it is worthless. And then who is the first to jump onto the AI generated crap? Oh, that's right, because there's no respect for artists and there's no respect for artistry. And you can see that also in the reading of the books by like Will Jordan, Shad Brooks. What other books have I read that are by these people? I'm not entirely sure, but I read all over the place. The reviews are on this channel if you want to see what I think about those books and what is actually in those books. They're not well crafted. If you enjoy them, fine. There's a difference between a well-crafted book and enjoying a book, but not only do political people push into the industry, regardless of which political side, they then defend their book against criticism via politics. So you've got with the right wing saying, hey, don't attack our books. We're against the big guy. We're against the industry, and you're hurting us trying to defeat the industry by critiquing our books fairly and saying whether they work or not. But then you've got the left wing that plays the identity politics, where it's constantly, this is an important book. You need to look at this book. You can't attack this book or you're a racist. It's the same game. And finally, there is some confirmation here. I appreciate, of all things, that Nick is straightforward in his grifting, and that is, again, what we've got.
I do have a question about Eric stuff. Is like ISO, is that like abbreviated for something, or is that the name of the character?
I honestly have no idea.
Oh, yeah, I was curious.
I haven't read his
I'm
book.
not a comic book guy.
Yeah,
I was a 13-year-old boomer.
I'm not either. My whole thing has always been this with all these guys. Look, like
you don't review anybody's shit.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty gnarly what he's done, though.
Yeah, and look, I met Eric. He's awesome. I have no issues with him at all, and I'm assuming he knows that. I don't buy most people's comics, and the ones I have bought, I don't read them. It's comic books aren't my thing. I literally am the guy who is going, I like the concept of a parallel economy created by independent creators, and I buy that marketing. Like, that is what I buy. Like, I don't give a shit if the story's good or bad, if the art is good or bad. If it's someone I support, that's what I do. And like I said, I hope ISOM 2 makes millions of dollars. I hope ISOM 3, 4, 5 all make millions of dollars. I don't care if they're good or not. And that's the annoying thing about the discussion on this is, like, I think it is valid to say that the independent creator community has effectively very little editing and very little criticism going on. But at the same time, I also think that it doesn't matter, and I don't expect the independent creator community to, like, dump a bunch of resources into hiring editors to do the storytelling stuff. I just don't give a shit.
Well,
buy what you like from whoever you want. But like, the people freaking out about, like, criticism are exactly what Dick is talking about. And there is a very, very closed circle of, like, we can't criticize anybody's stuff. And it's like, well,
I agree.
I understand.
I agree.
So when you get into the creative communities of any sort, specifically right now, because you've got the politicals and you've got the actual artists, and when you get into that space, you realize who is a businessman and who is an artist. And it's the artists typically who are more used to having criticisms. Like, I've been through so many criticisms via my mentors, via other people in critique groups, and through one-on-one critique partners. Even to the point of having my mentor on my debut novel saying, how's it feel to be writing a novel that will never be published? I understand what harsh criticism is, and I understand what is not helpful, because I've also had to learn how to sort through what is helpful and what is not helpful criticism in order to create the story that I am trying to tell. But then you see the business people in this environment, and those are the people that take every sort of criticism as if it's an attack on them as a person, an attack on their livelihood, and a moral incorrectness. And it's not just political people, because I have seen the right to market people do this as well, since it's seen to them as a business. I have been insulted by the right to market people as if I don't have bills to pay as well. However, I view books and storytelling as so much more than just a piece of shit to support a movement. And so, looking at what Nick just said, and with the number of people that likely subscribe to that exact same mantra of, I don't give a shit about the quality of this story, I'm supporting the idea. Okay, you are the exact same monster that you are complaining about on the left with everything being woke, with everything containing the ESG. Is if you care about the political message that is being sent and you say this is an important idea, you're doing the exact same thing that uplifting stories like the Bluest Eye, like The Hate You Give, like All Boys Are Blue, like Lawn Boy. You're saying the only reason that I'm supporting this is not because it's a good story, is not because I actually like any of the characters here. It's because I support the message, because the message is important in order to manipulate society, in order to send a political message. And so then when you complain, and this is the biggest problem with the culture warrior people, is they've built their entire career off saying everything is shit and they'll fix it, maybe, but they don't actually ever look for fiction or stories or heroes, and they continually complain. Or they're a Will Jordan and they're on their 19th book, where the 19th book is still nonsense because he's put zero time into learning the craft of how to tell an action story, even though he's done 19 of them and his entire channel is about critiquing movies. These people don't care. It's a political message, and they are the exact same as the companies that put on the rainbow flag just for June, because they're sending a political message to take money from the people who are angry and who support them. if that's you, you get to make your own choices of who you support, and how you support, and why you support them. But as a creative person, I hate this. I've complained about this marketing before. I've complained about the stomping on creatives with the people with political money, because it has always been the patrons of the arts that are the people that helped create the iconism, the beautiful, masterful churches and stained glass windows, and the art that you know of today is because people hired and believed in the arts. At least somebody is admitting to it, that there is the creative side and there is the political side, and there is supporting stuff on the right specifically for the political message. You can't argue with it now. Somebody has outed it. And just so you know, for the people that may find this video, every bit of criticism is not politically driven. It's not jealousy driven. If you want to go and check out any of my reviews on this channel, I review things from the left and from the right, and all of these critical ideas through the lens of, does this work in this story? And be honest. Do you actually care about the arts, about storytelling, about creating new heroes, or is this just a political power struggle? Because the only people that are hurting the arts and the storytelling and the future of the arts is you. You are the same as the beast that you're fighting, and maybe it's time that you admit it. Because just like you, traditional publishing is all about the Benjamins. And that's what we're looking at, not only with the political messaging, but with the businessmen that have infiltrated and taken over the art. That said, let's segue into Cormac McCarthy, because this is all about the money. And I know money is important, but is it so important that you would sell out all of your values and your integrity and culture, the heroes, the values that you want to share, just so that you can line your pocket? That's up to you. Okay, let's get into trad now. New York Times article in honor of Cormac McCarthy. He had a remarkable literary career. It could never happen now. Why? Because whether you're independent or you're traditionally published, the way that you succeed is writing in a niche which includes political ideology. They pretend that this parallel economy is something new. Romance authors have been doing this for 20 years, finding success. You're not doing anything different by taking money away. And this is also why these people can justify AI-generated content and then just flooding the system with AI-generated content. Because it's not about the product. It's not about the story. It's not about the arts. It's about sending a message. And if you can just flood the market with AI-generated content and then make it sell and go to the correct political ideology, that's all that matters. This is where it gets really depressing, because you can be as honest and you can try as hard as you want to tell a story that you think is worthwhile. But unless you're political, fuck you. Nobody wants you. Nobody wants stories. Nobody wants anything but money and power, whether it's traditional publishing or indie. And now you got all of these political people coming into the art space who don't give a shit about the art, overrunning the art, making it more political, but nobody wants anything of meaning anymore. Cormac McCarthy, who died last week at 89, had a famously unusual career. His first 5 novels, published over 2 decades, earned him considerably critical respect but were commercial failures. At one time, all of his books, including his 1985 masterpiece, Blood Meridian, fell out of print. Then something remarkable happened. In 1992, after a career spent eking out a living, Mr. McCarthy had a hit, All the Pretty Horses, which won a National Book Award and was adapted by Hollywood, set him squarely on a path to literary stardom and an outsized reputation as one of the greatest novelists of his time. This improbable trajectory, writers toiled for decades in obscurity before finding international renown, is the stuff of legends, but it did not occur by accident or happenstance. Mr. McCarthy's career was made possible by the tectonic shift that was happening in the publishing industry as it moved from the boutique model of the early 20th century to an era of conglomeration. If the first part of his career was illustrative of publishers' old model, the second half was made possible by a new approach. With his famed reclusiveness and idiosyncratic prose style, Mr. McCarthy might seem like an obdurate anarchism, but his career arc reveals that he was serendipitously of his time. Mr. McCarthy began his career in 1965 in unpromising circumstances. He was a 32-year-old University of Tennessee dropout with no literary agent who'd submitted a poorly typed manuscript of his first novel by mail to Random House. From the slush pile, it found its way to Albert Erskine's desk. Mr. Erskine had edited Ralph Ellison, Robert Penn Warren, and, most prominently, the writer Mr. McCarthy had most closely styled his work on, William Faulkner. Mr. Erskine liked the manuscript, and Random House published the novel Orchard Keeper, a gnarled, strange, and decidedly uncommercial debut. Mr. Erskine doggedly championed the book, sending advanced copies to Random House writer Truman Capote, and James Michener. According to the literary researcher Daniel Robert King, Mr. Erskine penned a letter to Saul Bellow stating that he'd never solicited you like this before, but that he felt that the book deserved all of the support that it could get. Nevertheless, it sold poorly. Mr. McCarthy's next novel, Outer Dark, was published in 1968 and did no better. When Random House asked Mr. McCarthy whether he had any connections that could help him sell his third novel, Child of God, about a necrophiliac serial killer, he replied in a letter, Ed McHayen of The Tonight Show is an acquaintance. He went finishing off Bimini together back in the spring and went partying together at Cat K until he fell off the dock and had to be flown to Lauderdale to the hospital. You might try to place a copy in his hands. He does read. Not like he drinks, of course, but some. If Random House contacted Mr. McMohan, it didn't help. Child of God did not sell either. Neither did Mr. McCarthy's fourth novel, Sutri, published in 1979. Mr. McCarthy had, however, earned the support of prestigious literary awards and fellowships, the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. In 1981, he was an inaugural MacArthur Fellowship, which, in a letter to a friend he called a little windfall from a foundation that would allow him to stay in the business a while longer. It supported the writing of Blood Meridian, an extraordinarily violent book about American mercenaries exterminating indigenous populations in northern Mexico. That book fared poorly too. By the late 80s, his prospects remained bleak. In 1987, Mr. Erskine retired. In 1989, Mr. McCarthy wrote to a friend, I've been a full-time professional writer for 28 years and I've never received a royalty check. That, I'll betcha, is a record. The fact that the world is now celebrating the arc of Mr. McCarthy's monumental career is a testament to the novelist's undeniable talent, but it's also due to the timely recognition that without his protector, Mr. Erskine, and the vanished world of publishing that Mr. Erskine represented, he would need to change the way his books were published. In the 1960s, large corporations began acquiring publishing houses, consolidating the industry into fewer and fewer conglomerates. Sound familiar? In the 1970s, inflation increased the prices of books, and even as wages stagnated and consumers had less to spend, shareholder value became corporate scripture, inducing marginal demands for quarterly growth. For publishing, this meant marketing, publicity, and sale departments grew and gained influence. Editors spent more time in meetings and filling out profit or loss forms. Literary agents became essential intermediaries as publishing houses no longer rifled through submissions to find emerging talents. A poorly typed manuscript like Mr. McCarthy's debut would struggle to make it into, let alone be rescued from, the slush pile. Random House had a guardian against these forces of change in its chief executive, Robert Bernstein, who in the 1970s buffered the publisher from the interference of its corporate patent, RCA. In the 1980s, he did the same when ownership shifted to S.I. Newhouse. But in 1989, Mr. Newhouse replaced him with Albert Vitali, a businessman who'd spent most of his career at a typewriter company, Olivetti, and the car maker Fiat. As recounted in an interview, Mr. Vitali gave the publishing perspectives. He told the staff members that they needed to make money. His new policy, according to the author Andrei Shifrin, was that each book should make money on its own and that one title should no longer be allowed to subsidize another. It was a credo that would have made a long gestation of Mr. McCarthy's early career impossible, which is also what we're seeing today, where the books being pushed out are not of quality, they don't matter. It doesn't matter if there's a possibility of them becoming anything in the future. People are focusing on making the money now. Quality be damned, story be damned, who gives a shit? It's about making money and opportunistically selling shit on what's popular. It doesn't matter if it's the LGBT this week. It doesn't matter if it's racial grievances another week. It doesn't matter if it's woke or anti-woke. It is all doing the exact same thing to make the money up front at the destruction of the future of arts in general.
by greedy people who don't care. It did, however, make the next phase of his career possible. Mr. Erskine retired. Mr. McCarthy wrote to the agent Lynn Nesbitt, who represented Robert Caro, Joanne Didion, Toni Morrison, and Tom Wolfe, among many others, to seek representation. "I've never had an agent before," Mr. McCarthy wrote, as recounted in The Cut, "but I'm thinking now of getting one. And if you're interested in talking to me, please call me before noon Rocky Mountain time." She passed his letter along to an ambitious protege, Amanda Binky Urban, who, as it happened, had read Sutri and considered it an amazing book. Miss Urban took Mr. McCarthy on and engineered a move from Random House to Knopf, where a new editor-in-chief, Sony Mehta, had recently replaced the legendary Robert Gottlieb, who also died last week. The New York Times called Mr. Mehta's arrival at Knopf torturous, and as he struggled to learn the house's mysterious traditions, he needed a big win. And when Miss Urban pitched him on publishing Mr. McCarthy as an esteemed MacArthur recipient who had not yet had a commercial hit, he replied, "I'd love that." She called the head of Random House to approve the move, and as she told The Cut, he replied, "I can't believe I'm picking up the phone to talk about an author who's never sold more than 2,500 copies. At Knopf, Mr. Mehta and Miss Urban tasked a hotshot team, including the editor Gary Fisketjohn, the publicist Jane Friedman, the designer Chip Kidd, and the portrait photographer Marian Ettlinger, with the challenge of releasing Mr. McCarthy's new book. They recognize that All the Pretty Horses, which tells the story of a teenage cowboy who travels to Mexico, falls in love, kills a man, and mourns the loss of the West, has decidedly more commercial potential than Mr. McCarthy's previous works. It was, among other things, the first novel of his career with a hero readers could root for. Published in 1992, Horses was the kind of hit that had long evaded Mr. McCarthy. It initially sold 100,000 copies and was adapted into a movie starring Matt Damon. Mr. McCarthy's commercial success continued, and soon he became a monumental figure in the wider culture. A latter novel, No Country for Old Men, was adapted into an Oscar-winning movie, and the novel The Road became the bestseller after receiving the imprimatur of Oprah Winfrey. Mr. MacArthur was twice the beneficiary of a then-dominant industry ethos. His early career was sustained by an editor who stuck with him despite the commercial struggles. His latter career was buoyed by the surge of marketing power ushered in by the conglomerate era, which goes to say also that the way to get a book successful is marketing. So the pick on garbage and then the push for garbage is entirely creating success out of garbage by funding and marketing garbage. That's just what it is. Call me salty, I call it what it is, okay? The hardest thing that any of us deal with, especially when you're working, when you understand this, especially when you're any sort of indie, is getting people to see what you're doing, because there is so much out there. The way that any of us get something to be seen is the hardest thing that there is. So when you have the industry behind you, when you have any industry behind you, which includes the political industry, you always have a better shot because you are getting people to see what you're doing. And that is where success lies, more than the quality of any content. The industry trends towards conglomeration has only intensified. Bertelsmann, a German media conglomerate, acquired Random House in 1998. In 2013, Random House merged with Penguin, forming the world's largest publisher. In 2020, Penguin Random House won a bid to acquire Simon & Schuster, the third largest publisher in the United States, but the deal was blocked by the Department of Justice on antitrust grounds. When Mr. MacArthur mailed his first manuscript to Random House, the company's entire staff could be listed on a postcard. Now it employs more than 10,000 people. A career like Mr. McCarthy's, with its long gestation before a blockbuster second act, could be nearly impossible to repeat today. An author without an agent or a track record of book sales would never gain a hearing at a major publishing house, and a school dropout in his early 30s would face slim odds of becoming a prize-winning author, as an MFA from a prestigious writing program has often become the price of entry for splashy literary fiction debuts. True, a lot of it is knowing the right people. It's impossible to know what kind of writer Mr. McCarthy would have developed into without decades in which to hone his singular voice. But contemporary success stories about novelists tend to have a very different aspect. They're stories like that of Colson Whitehouse, who followed up with his well-received 1999 debut, The Institutionist, with novels that deftly navigated genres before reaching a new plateau of winning a Pulitzer Prize in 2017 for The Underground Railroad, or Bonnie Garmus, the author of Lessons in Chemistry, whose very first book became a runaway hit in 2022. A Lesson in Chemistry, I'm pretty sure, is feminist fiction as well. So again, we're pushing the political. We're putting marketing dollars behind the things that are political to push the ideas instead of the arts. It's always about the politics. The job of nurturing voices like Mr. McCarthy has largely shifted to the parallel world of independent and nonprofit publishing, where many authors like Percival Everett, who wrote more than 20 novels for small presses before his 2021 novel, The Trees, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, who recently jumped to the publisher's Doubleday for a six-figure deal, have found a home. As for Mr. McCarthy, he'll be remembered as a writer whose career we can admire, and he's not a writer whose path to success anyone today should hope to replicate or could replicate. So this is just to say, whether you're traditional or whether you're indie, you're facing the same thing, where the politics are coming in. It's just which institution are you going up against? Are you going up against the woke institution or the anti-woke institution? Because they're doing the same thing. They're saying the same thing. And they're saying they don't give a shit about what you're making. It's about having the right politics, and in some cases, even on the right wing, it's about having the right identity. Because say that you are a leftist who left the left. Say that you are anything that is stereotypically assigned with the woke, and you've gone to the right. I just wish that there was less of this garbage. I wish that we could actually talk about the arts. But there are too many people who focus on the money, who focus on themselves, and who only focus on what they can get out of themselves right now instead. And then there are people like Nick Rokita, who don't give a shit, and are just... because the arts aren't for them, they don't care. And so the only value that they see there is supporting the politics behind the arts. And if that's you, then you really don't have a place to criticize the mainstream about politics in their writing, because you do the exact same thing. And that's all that you see the arts for. And I'm sorry that that's all you see the arts for, but it does get me feeling a bit hopeless, you know? Like, why? Why bother doing this? Nobody gives a shit. Everybody just wants to get further and further away from each other. Everybody just wants to be full of anger and hate and blaming other people for their circumstances, and then the rest of them are just making money off of the grievances. So what is anybody to do? You got me. Congratulations, I guess. That's all I gotta say. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Good luck with this one, right? Have a great weekend otherwise. Don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?